Hey everybody, Nate Carter here with today's Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. If you'll bear with me, I'd like to nerd out with you for a little while here. When I was in music school, we studied a piece by Richard Wagner called Tristan and Isolde. It's an opera, and what's notable about it is that there's a special thing that Wagner did with a specific chord that he had show up throughout the entire opera. And whenever you heard that chord, it was to remind you of the character of Tristan. And it was a very distinct sound. And throughout every movement of the piece, you could hear it in different places. And sometimes it was subtle, and sometimes it was loud, and sometimes it was played by the strings, and sometimes it was played by the brass. But whenever you heard it, it was very distinctive, and you knew that he was making a statement, that he was referring to that character of Tristan. And the reason I bring that up, that just came to mind as I was reading Numbers. Because one of the unique things that God has placed throughout Scripture, much like the Tristan chord, is the concept of holiness. That God throughout Scripture is creating a holy people for Himself because He is holy. And what's interesting is that, much like the Tristan chord, sometimes it's presented in different ways, but yet it's still the same idea that God's desire and His mission on earth is to create holiness in us, so that we can stand before Him, who is without sin. In Numbers chapter 5, it begins with this: "The Lord said to Moses, command the Israelites to send away from the camp anyone who has a defiling skin disease," so that's leprosy, "or a discharge of any kind, or who is ceremonially unclean because of a dead body. Send away male and female alike. Send them outside the camp, so they will not defile their camp, where I dwell among them." And the Israelites did so. They sent them outside the camp. They did just as the Lord had instructed Moses. Now, what we see here is God saying, I am holy, and I dwell inside the camp, and my people are to be a holy people. And so the people that surround me in the tabernacle, my people are to be holy as well. And if you are unholy, if you are unclean, it makes you unholy. It makes you unfit for my presence. And so what the law does here is it creates a solution to people who should find themselves, for instance, with leprosy, which is this rampant, contagious skin disease. And the law says, send them out of the camp because they're not fit to be before me, because I am holy and my people are holy. Now, leprosy is an Old Testament representation of sin. And the solution for this sin in the Old Testament is to take it out of the camp. And that makes sense, except that doesn't cure the person of the leprosy. It basically separates them from the people of God, but they're not cured of their sin. They're not cured of the leprosy. Now contrast that with what Jesus did. Jesus, when He went to the cross, He didn't simply send sinners out of His sight, but rather He cleansed the sin so that they could approach God and His holiness and approach Him in holiness. And I love that juxtaposition there. It's the same issue, it's the same motif, it's the same Tristan chord, if you will, that same issue of holiness, that God needs to create a holy people. And the law does that by taking the impure things out of the camp and out of His presence. But Jesus takes care of the problem for good by cleansing us and purifying us from the leprosy that plagues us and making us right in His sight. The only one that can do that is Jesus by His sacrifice on the cross. So as you read the pages of Scripture, look for that motif of holiness and how God is solving the sin problem in this world, and watch how Jesus does that once and for all. As a side little note, Jesus spent time with the leprous people. He cleansed the lepers. Jesus was not afraid to touch them because He knew that He could heal them, not only of their skin disease, not only from their exterior impurity, but most importantly, from the impurity that lies within them, their sin and our sin as well. So go in God's grace today. Know that He's made us clean. Have a great rest of your day. See you next time on the Cornerstone Connection.